Hi, it's English time with me, your teacher Ricel. To begin with our lesson for today, let us have brain exercise. I want you to study the signages on the left side of the screen. What do they mean? And then try to analyze the following sentences. 1. You may recycle plastic containers to help the earth. 2. You can't smoke here. 3. You have to follow the signage stop. What have you noticed with the following sentences? Will you obey what's written on it? If yes, what do you think these sentences want to express? Of course, you're right. The first sentence expresses permission. It gives you permission to recycle useful things. The second sentence expresses prohibition. It tells you not to smoke. And the third expresses obligation. It says that you have to follow the signage. In this lesson, we will be dealing with modals. Modals that express prohibition, permission, obligation, and no obligation. At the end of the lesson, you are expected to express permission, obligation, and prohibition using modals, and then compose clear and coherent sentence using modals. What are modals? Modals are auxiliary or helping verbs that may express permission, prohibition, obligation, and no obligation. The examples of modals are flashed here on the right side of the screen. Have to, can't, can, has to, may, could, must, mustn't, don't have to, doesn't have to. They are necessary to determine the weight of one's action to be done or performed. They also help in understanding the source of permission, obligation, and/or prohibition. In this lesson, I will teach you how to use modals properly to express the correct action or idea you want to perform or to give, such as permission, prohibition, obligation, and no obligation. Permission is an act of giving consent or authorization. The modals to use are can, could, and may. These modals have different usages. Let us discuss them one by one. The modal can. Can is used to ask for and to give permission. Usually, can is used for informal conversations. Here are the examples. 1. Can you give me your number? We used the modal can to ask permission if he could give us his number. 2. Yes, you can help me with this. The modal can is used to give permission to someone that he could help you. 3. I can do it if you want me to. Here, the can is used to ask permission because of the phrase if you want me to, which suggests that can is used to seek permission. How about you? Can you give me another example sentence using the modal can? That's great! Let's proceed to the next modal. The modal could. Could is used as a more polite and more formal modal in asking permission. Can and could are both used to ask permission. However, they just differ in terms of formality depending on the person you are talking to. To ask permission in a more polite and formal way, you can use this modal, could. These are the examples. 1. I could possibly ask my mom to cook it for us. 2. Could I interview the mayor? 3. Could you lend me your book? The modal could is used to ask permission, but in a polite manner. We can say that the people we are talking to here in the example sentences are not our closest friends, that we should do it in a formal way. If you are talking to a stranger, how would you ask permission? Could you give me your own example? Good job! That's right! The modal may. May is the most polite and most formal modal in asking and giving permission. If you want to ask or give permission in the most polite and formal way, you must use this modal, may. Here are the examples. 1. Medical practitioners affected by COVID-19 may now claim their financial support from the government. 2. Teachers may now distribute the modules to the learners. With the examples 1 and 2, if you noticed, the modal may is used in a very formal manner. This kind of tone in giving or asking permission is usually used in writing, making announcements, letters, memos, and the likes. Number 3. May I borrow your book, please? The third example, with the may modal, the way of asking permission sounded very formal and polite. So, if you're talking to someone higher than you, how would you ask or give permission? You may now give your own example. Wow, you are a fast learner. Moving on to the next use of modal. To express prohibition. Prohibition is the act of disallowing or prohibiting someone in performing or doing something, meaning you are not allowed to do a certain task. The modals to use are can't, mustn't, or must not. Let us discuss them individually. The modal can't. Can't is used in dealing with something against rules, laws, and signs. This is used when the speaker is not the one who sets the rules. This means that can't is used to express prohibition that is set not by the speaker but in accordance with the law, rules, or signages. Examples. Number 1. You can't go out during the community quarantine. From quarantine policy. That is according to the quarantine policy. That is why we use can't to express prohibition. Number 2. The company can't apply for motion for reconsideration. Legal proceeding. That is in accordance with the law, so we use can't. 3. You can't buy any alcoholic beverages due to liquor ban policy. Again, can't was used because it is based from a written policy. Is it clear? Look around you. What are the other examples of prohibition that we are experiencing right now? Very good. That's correct. The next modal is mustn't or must not. It is used in dealing with something that is not permitted. In this context, it is the speaker who sets the rules. So, we use the modal must not if the one who said the rules is the speaker and not from a legal source. Examples. Number 1. You must not turn off your camera during online class, teacher to students. The rule was said by the speaker, which is the teacher. That is why we use must not. 2. Mustn't you eat the fruits inside the fridge? Mother to a child. The mother is the speaker who set the rule to not eat the fruit. That's why it's mustn't. 3. Salome must not tell my secrets to her friends. Boss to a colleague. It's boss who made the rule, so it is must not. Now, can you think of anything you don't want someone to do because you say so? That's a very good example. Let's continue with the next usage of modals. And that is to express obligation. Obligation expresses commitment or duty. This expresses something you have to do. The modals used are has or have to and must. Let's learn them one by one. The modals has to or have to. It is has or have because the usage is depending on the number of subjects in the sentence. Has is for singular subjects, while have is used for plural subjects. These modals are used when the obligation is not came from the speaker. The obligation is set by an authority, rule, or a law. You use these modals if the obligation you have to perform or do is coming from an authority or based from a law or rule. Examples. 1. I have to be in the airport before the flight departure. Have was used because the subject is I, which takes plural verb. It is an airport rule or policy that you have to, that's the modal, to be early before the flight departure. Number 2, she has to submit her report on time. Has was used because the subject is singular, pronoun she. The obligation was set by an authority, so we use has to. Number 3, the company has to pay retrenchment benefits to its employees. Has was used because the subject is singular, the company. It is written in our law that benefits of employees are to be paid by their companies. That is why we use has to as modals. Remember, the verb has or have must always come together with the preposition to express obligation. They must always be pairs. Has to and have to. Can you still follow? How about you? Can you give me an example sentence using has to or have to? That's right, you made it. The next modal is must. It is used when expressing obligation that comes from the speaker or from an authority. It means that the obligation came from the speaker itself, who can also be the authority. Here are the examples. Number 1, I must call my husband now. The obligation came from the speaker itself. That's why it is a must. 2. You must finish the report on time. Boss to secretary. The speaker is the boss, who is the authority as well. So must was used. 3. I must stay away from them. Again, the obligation came from the speaker itself. That's why we used must. So as a student, you must listen very carefully to this lecture. Did I use the correct modal? What do you think? Yes, you're correct. The last use of modal is to express no obligation. No obligation expresses the absence of commitment or duty as one may do it or not. Modals to use are don't or doesn't have to, meaning these modals are used if you don't have any obligation to follow or to do a certain task. It is your own choice to do it or not. Let's continue studying the modals. We have two options, don't or doesn't, because the usage is depending on the number of subjects in the sentence. Doesn't is for singular subjects, while don't is for plural subjects. These modals are used to express no obligation. Observe the pattern, don't or doesn't plus have to. Don't and doesn't express none or not, while have to expresses obligation. To create modals for expressing no obligation, we put them all together to have a new meaning. Don't have to, doesn't have to. They must be in pairs. I hope you got it. Here are the examples. 1. She doesn't have to attend the funeral if she is not feeling well. It expresses no obligation for her to attend the funeral, especially if she doesn't feel well. So we use the modal doesn't have to. Doesn't was used because the subject is singular, the pronoun she. 2. They don't have to come to my office in person. They may submit it online. It expresses no obligation to come to the office. They have an option to submit it online. So we use the modal don't have to. Don't was used because the subject they, a pronoun, is plural. Number 3. The employees don't have to come this morning as the activity will start in the afternoon. It expresses no obligation for the employees to come early because the activity will happen in the afternoon. Don't was used because the subject employees is plural. Did you get it? Now, give me your own example. Good job! To summarize our lesson, always remember to use these modals. Permission, can, could, may. For prohibition, can't, mustn't, or must not. For obligation, has or have to, and must. No obligation, don't or doesn't have to. Now that you have learned the use of each modals, it's time for you to practice it by answering these following activities. You may refer to your WHLP. Learning Task 1, Matching Signages on page 6. Learning Task 2, Choosing correct modals to complete the statement on page 7. Learning Task 4, Supplying phrases to complete the dialogues on page 10 of your module. For the Performance Task 1, you have to get an article from a newspaper, journal, or other online sources. Copy or cut and paste it in a short bond paper, then highlight each modal used in the article. Then identify if the highlighted modals express permission, obligation, or prohibition. For Learning Task 1, all you have to do is to match the signage below with their corresponding meaning. Write the answers only on a paper. See it on page 6 of your module. For the Learning Task 2, you have to choose the correct modal to complete the sentence. Write the letter of your answers only. You can see it on page 7 of your module. Write the answers only on the paper. For Learning Task 4, you have to copy it, then complete the dialogues by supplying phrases or modals plus verbs that express permission, obligation, prohibition, whichever is necessary. You can see it on page 10 of your module, copy and answer. For your Performance Task 1, this is a sample output. Again, you have to get an article from a newspaper, journal, or other online sources, copy or cut and paste it in a short bond paper, then highlight each modal used in the article, then identify if the highlighted modals express permission, obligation, or prohibition. Again, here are your activities. Good luck, everyone! Thank you for listening. See you in our next class. Goodbye!